Okay, and now we're recording. And I'm gonna change the view real quick, 'cause I'm so good at this. There we go. Now I got the speaker view on. All right, so first off, thank you, Brian and Beth, for being here with me tonight. So I wanted to have some people on, have a conversation about pro versus con the COVID mRNA vaccines. And I was thinking, I threw it out there into the social media universe saying, hey, who would want to, do this? And I had a lot of people who were getting it, a lot of people who weren't getting it for a lot of different reasons. But then I had you two reach out to me in ways, one way or another. And I decided to say, okay, we have similar backgrounds. You're people I've worked with in emergency medical services before. And I'll give you a second to give your little bio and talk about whatever you want to talk about with that too in a second. But I thought, okay, I have two people here who come from similar backgrounds, who are my friends, who I've literally been on ambulances with. I figure what better baseline to have this kind of conversation than people who are on the medical field, who are frontline providers, no less, and who have been in the same situations that we've all got that mutual understanding. So the mutual respect, I think, is going to go a long way in having a discussion. So again, I'm not going to call this a debate. We're having a conversation. One of you opted to get the vaccine, one of you opted not to, and I just want to talk about that. We're not here to say you should do this or you should do that. We're going to present information about why you two made your different decisions, then in the hopes that it will provide information for others to make their choice based on as well, or at least inspire them to find out more research on their own. Because ultimately, if you have an educated decision about why you do something and you feel it's the best choice for you, I support that 100%. I think that that's a much better way to go about it than hearing some, oh yeah, it's going to give me superpowers, or oh, it's going to give me nanobots. Let's have a rational discussion about the actual pros and cons for different populations and different people. And with that intro, we can start with Beth. Do you want to introduce yourself, talk about how we met, what you do, and why you're here?
Sure. Hello, I am Beth. I actually have been an ER nurse for 15 years. Sorry, my kids are in the background screaming already. So 15 years emergency medicine. I have worked in Miami. I have worked here in Orlando. I've actually done fixed wing aircraft transports as well through different countries, mostly the islands. That was a lot of fun. What else? I've got my bachelor's in nursing. I've got my PNCC and my ENPC, and obviously 3 children that are, wreaking havoc while we're trying to do this here.
Naturally.
So that's just the gist of my background. Nothing crazy exciting.
Okay. All right. And Brian, you want to go up next?
Yep. So my name is Brian. I've been in EMS now, or I guess public safety, for about 13 years professionally. I started out as an EMT, obviously, became a paramedic, tried the fire thing a little bit, decided I didn't want to do that and roll hose all day. So decided that I wanted to advance my career from EMS and got into flight medicine, where I'm a flight paramedic now here in Central Florida. Obviously, I have my paramedic, my flight paramedic certification, and all that fun stuff, and just loving it.
Awesome. Fantastic. Now, all right, so I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So Beth, you opted not to get it, and Brian, you opted to get the vaccine. Now, Brian, which one did you get, the Pfizer or the Moderna?
I got the Pfizer.
Okay. And so I guess before we go into more of the reasons why you did or didn't get it, let's talk about the vaccine itself. So at least we're on a baseline of understanding what we're talking about. So initially, I want to talk about the Pfizer vaccine, like I said before we started recording, but between the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, they're very, very similar. If either one of you wanted to talk about which one, you got it, Brian. You want to talk about what the vaccine is and touch on the mRNA aspect of it too?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, it's a very unique concept that's never been tried before as far as vaccines go. mRNA research isn't new. mRNA, it's been around for years as far as how it works and how it produces and how it reproduces and causes the body to trigger its immune response. But as far as a vaccine goes, it's very unique, whereas we've never tried this before. Basically, what it is it's stuff that's already in your body that they just cause it to change how your body reacts to it. It basically tricks your body into thinking that your cells need to attack this foreign substance that was just injected into you, because it starts creating something that looks exactly like the coronavirus. Those little spike proteins you see on the outside of the coronavirus are created by the vaccine itself in this lipid form, and then your body attacks it thinking it is the vaccine, giving you the same antibodies, the same T-cell response, everything like that it would as if you were exposed to the virus itself. So it's really a pretty simple idea. It's not a dead virus like some of the vaccines. It's not a weakened form of the virus. So it's much different. But in the end, they're not quite sure how it's going to create long-term responses, obviously, because they've only been around for so long. But it's definitely a very unique thing that's been studied for a long time. But to the same end, it's a new technology as well. So it's unique in that aspect where they don't know about it, but they know a lot about it too. So it's a very, very interesting thing just in general.
Right. Okay. Is there anything you want to add to that, Beth?
No, I mean, he touched on the fact that it has been around, and that was one of my deciding factors. It has been around, but it hasn't. And you know, my concerns on that was the long-term effects that we don't know yet, because it is so new. So, I mean, the mRNA is super exciting, and I'm very excited for the technology that we've been able to create, the mRNA. I know there's been lots of studies with cancer cells, and the founders of the Pfizer, the husband and wife, they actually worked on a bunch of cancer research, and I believe they sold their research stuff back in like 2006. I was trying to read up on them too while I was researching the vaccine, but they sold it for a very pretty penny.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Billions of dollars, but they're a power couple. You know, it's very exciting to see those, but it's so new, right?
Right. Yeah. So from what I've done, of course, obviously I've researched all this too, the big nerd that I am. So from what I understand, so basically the concept of it came around even in 1990. I think there's some lab experiments on mice where they were working more with DNA, and they realized with some of this they can not get into the DNA. DNA is very, very hard to get into and modify, but they can change some of the messaging, some of the cells. If you get certain kinds of messaging into like the ribosomes inside the cells or into the cytoplasm of the cells, ribosomes pick it up. Basically, it's like a blueprint for creating something. And in this case, like basically what you're doing when you get this vaccine is you're giving a blueprint to your cells of how to make the spike protein specific to SARS-CoV-2. And then that creates you know, of course, the T cells and antibodies see that, and they start building up more of it. Like, okay, so this probably shouldn't be here. So it builds up the antibodies. So when you are, you know, approached by that spike protein from assumably SARS-CoV-2, you've already got the natural response there. You're not having all the extra stuff all over again, and where you shouldn't be able to take foot in the first place. So that's what I've gotten from it. So I think you're both exactly right. So it's something that's been studied for a little while. They've been developing mRNA stuff for, you know, a decade or more, but it's the first time we've really had trials with people. So, and with it being something that has been, you know, seems like it's on some, because usually you see science in the background. Usually you're not seeing the scientific method, you know, so upfront on the headlines every single day. So it's been a very, very interesting year and a half really at this point for people seeing that what the process is and how we think, okay, maybe it's this thing. Oh, this scientific data has changed a little bit. Maybe now it's this thing. So that's another reason I'm really excited to have people on who understand the scientific method and who get that making an assumption based on hypothesis previously that was found to be untrue, and then changing that based on new data isn't flip-flopping or lying. It's the way science works. So, all right. So I guess what we do now is I'll have each of you just say, you know, your reasons for getting it and not getting it, and then if there's anything we want to address or anything you guys want to talk about during, like, after you've both gone over your reasons, then we can get into it, start talking there. So, Beth, if you want to take it away, talk about why your concerns were and why you opted not to get the vaccine.
Sure. So I actually had lots of conversations with, you know, doctors in the ERs. I've done my own research on the medical journals. Again, like I just mentioned, it's just a little too soon for me. It's not that I'm not saying that I'll never get it. I'm just not ready. You know, my biggest thing was being in the ER, being on the front lines, going to the grocery store. We're exposed to it every single day. You can wash your hands, you can use your mask. I was actually exposed to it back in June, a direct contact outside of work, and my antibodies tested negative. I actually ended up retesting just actually beginning of December for antibodies, and I was positive. I had apparently had COVID back at the end of October. So this is kind of when the vaccine really started to be pushed, you know, was like December. That's why I was like, let me go see if I've got my antibodies first before I make any rash decisions. But apparently at the end of October, I think I had it. I had very minor symptoms. I had a little bit of chills, no fevers, fatigue. I said, I've been working night shift for 15 years, but I haven't felt fatigue like that in so long. I was like, dang, man, am I just getting that old? I can't do these night shifts anymore. Couldn't get off the couch type fatigue. And then I had 2 days of just intractable back pain into my hips. Couldn't get comfortable. I lift a lot of weights, so I knew I didn't do anything at the gym. I just couldn't get comfortable. Lo and behold, I tested on the 4th because I had a small surgical procedure soon after. On the 4th of November, I was negative. I never actually had gone during my symptoms time to see if I had any positivity because I had no other symptoms other than that fatigue, and the back pain, which again, working in the ER, you'd think, maybe you know that, Beth. You might have COVID, right?
Fatigue and back pain is just a baseline for frontline healthcare workers.
Yeah, exactly. So I ended up not even testing at that time. But before, when the Pfizer was coming out and work was talking about administering it to us if we wanted it, I said, let me just go get my antibodies checked. And lo and behold, they came back positive. So that kind of also played into my decision was I have the natural antibodies, number one. Number two, those who receive the vaccines actually can donate plasma within 2 weeks of receiving the vaccine. However, they cannot donate a convalescent plasma for those who are actively fighting COVID in the hospitals who need convalescent plasma. So that actually also weighed into my decision. And I vowed to go donate plasma, which is what I did to do that. And I did confirm with them at the blood donation place that they said, correct. Since it's not FDA officially approved yet, and they don't really know how the artificial or whatever antibodies that you get from the vaccine, they don't know how it's going to transfer over to somebody else via convalescent plasma. There's still studies. They're still trying to figure it out. There's just so much I don't know when questions are asked about the vaccine. Will antibodies from that last, right? We know with COVID, they're kind of wearing off anywhere from 4, 6 months to a year if you've had actually had COVID. They don't know with the vaccine yet how long they'll officially last. Will they wear off, right? So that was one of my other concerns. Okay, if I'm going to get it, is this going to become an annual thing that I'm now going to have to get? Then one of my other reasons was I know that there's no research necessarily on it, and I'm done having children, but there is talk of infertility. That doesn't play necessarily, like I said, in my decision making, but I do have a daughter, and I know it has not been tested on children yet, but that's also in the back of my mind of that question has come up. Again, we don't know. So I guess it kind of to circle back around, a lot of my reason for not getting it was simply there's still so much unknown, right? Like we know that long-term effects from COVID can be deadly. You can get emboli, you can bleed to death, you either hypercoagulate or you completely go into DIC and bleed out. We know those things, right? We know the long terms of like pulmonary fibrosis, having all the scar tissue build up in your lungs. You end up being, a young 30-something-year-old woman who's active and end up on oxygen all the time. We see that. Those are known, and I guess that was the gamble I was willing to take for the, the alternative of the unknown. So those are my reasons.
Okay. I'm writing down. So I was looking down, writing down a few things that we can circle back to after Brian tells us why he got his, because there are some of the things I definitely think that are concerns that a lot of people have. I think it would be great to talk about that from both sides, so to speak. So, but yeah, we'll come back to that. So, Brian, so when you looking at the vaccine, so why did you opt to get it?
So I had a very unique opportunity, obviously, working at the hospital I work at, where we have leading infectious disease experts as a teaching hospital. We have our own actual disease hospital, like infectious disease hospital there. So I had some really interesting people to be able to talk to about COVID, about the vaccine, about all that kind of stuff, who really quelled a lot of my fears that I had about the vaccine itself, the mRNA, and everything like that. I did have COVID back in the end of July, and I was actually pretty sick. I haven't been that sick probably ever that I can remember in my life. Thankfully, I didn't have to be hospitalized. I was never admitted or anything like that. It was all treatment at home. But getting that diagnosis was one of probably it was a very nerve-wracking experience. Working in flight medicine, obviously, we're transporting these patients on ECMO. We're transporting them. They come here, they die, and seeing all that. So not knowing how it's going to affect me personally, because it affects everybody different, was extremely nerve-wracking. And one of my biggest reasons was I don't want to go through that again. So the more immunity I can build, and it may sound like a selfish reason, but the more immunity I can build for the virus itself is for me. On top of that, the long-term effects I've had so far from the COVID vaccine, or from having COVID itself, it's been heck since having it, shortness of breath on short exertion, walking up a flight of stairs, walking from the parking garage to my office, on long flights and things like that. After exercising, my heart rate will stay, 140, 150 for an hour after exercising. I'll wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing in the 140s. I'll get these random headaches all the way through the night. And just those long-term effects of actually having the vaccine itself, or having the virus itself, to me outweighed the potential long-term effects of the vaccine. Since I'm probably going to have these effects from the virus, am I really going to have any additional long-term effects from the vaccine that wouldn't be from the virus anyways? So I felt if they're going to need a lab rat, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, you're already suffering from some of those results, some of those bad sides of it too. So I understand that for sure.
Right. And, I'm 31 years old. I'm relatively healthy. I don't have any past medical history other than the typical back injuries that you get from EMS and medicine. So I figured that being that person, I can kind of lead by example and show people that it is safe. So that way people who may be questioning it, who may not feel comfortable right now. I even have coworkers and things like that who don't feel comfortable right now. And I completely understand that. But I feel like if they're seeing people who they work with that haven't had side effects from the vaccine and 6 months from now are still doing fine when they know more, they can really look at that and see, all right, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling great. I feel better. I have a sense of relief on every COVID flight I go on every COVID patient I run into. The unfortunate thing is you can still get the virus, similar to the vaccine. So I can still get it and take it home. But I'm not going to shed the virus as long, which is good. I may only shed it for 2 or 3 days versus shedding it for the full 2 weeks. Thankfully, when I had COVID, I didn't spread it to any of my family, and I don't want to spread it to any of my family, and I want to be able to, I've got a brand new niece who's a year old who I've never met yet. My family lives 1,300 miles away. So the more I can do to get rid of this virus as quick as possible, that's my big reasons, is just seeing everything we've seen with this virus. I feel like I want to do everything I can personally to help get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. And I want to emphasize again, I have you two talking about, reasons you got it, reasons you didn't get it. I want to make sure everyone here knows that we're not trying to sell one side or the other. Like when Brian says his reasons, I want to do this, want to do that, he's not coming after Beth. We're just talking about our personal reasons for stuff. We want you all to make your personal decisions as well. So again, I'm just these things get so hostile so quick. Not with you guys, I'm sure, but like imagine the discussion around this right now. Like people commenting as they're listening to it before they even hear the whole thing. Like I'm just trying to preemptively prevent a dumpster fire. Just I'll throw a little disclaimer in there now and then. But okay, all right, great. So both of y'all had great reasons, I think, for getting it or not getting it. And I think that there's definitely two ways people can approach decisions where there's not a whole lot of information that, and there's a lot of questions. And I don't think that it's irrational at all to want to delay and be like, okay, well, I've got some more questions that I've answered for us. Not everyone's ride or die. That's not a bad thing. It's a survival mechanism. I think it's important. And then other people are more willing to take other kinds of risks too, especially with Brian, in your case, you're a very unique one where you had it bad, you still got side effects or your issues from it. So you not wanting to be able to catch it again, especially with the reports of things mutating some. I know there's independent mutation in the UK, another one independently mutated in South Africa, and I want to say other places in maybe the Southeast Pacific. Who knows what's happening in China? But that's with all those factors in mind, I definitely understand why I'm going that route. I just got the 10-minute warning for the Zoom meeting, so that's why I was distracted there for a second. I was like, oh man, we're just getting kicked into it. Okay, so was there so Brian, you said you did have some questions that you were concerned with, but talking to these different people kind of helped relax your fears about some of certain things a little bit. So we've got 10 minutes where we're gonna take a break and re-kick up the Zoom again. But so for now, what would you say is one of the biggest concerns you had about it, and what kind of information did you find out regarding it?
One of the biggest things I had was obviously what is mRNA and how does it work? You know, why have we not used it for anything in the past?
Messenger RNA,
And
yeah.
mRNA. And the biggest thing they said was the reason that they haven't used it is because they haven't needed it. There's really been nothing that they've had that's really prompted them to use it. You know, it can't really be used for cancer research, can't really be used for it can be, but it's not really beneficial in that case. And they finally found this opportunity where, you know, they were searching through all these different files of what can we do to come up with this vaccine. And, you know, it's almost like somebody just pulled out the file in their back office, buried underneath things, and said, let's give this a shot. And learning more about that, it was really interesting to learn how it works and everything. And the fact that it just worked. You know, they were amazed at how well it worked. That was one of my big questions. So that was answered pretty easily. And then doing some of my own research with that as well. Mm. And then the other thing I wanted to ask them, because I know some of these people pretty well just from working at the hospital and everything, and what are their personal feelings on the political side of things. And it was a very interesting perspective that a lot of them had. And what most of them said is it's amazing what happens when you actually throw money towards people's health. When you actually throw hundreds of millions of dollars, you know, almost billions of dollars to research something to get it done quickly. Most of them are like, if we threw this amount of money at cancer research on a daily basis, we'd have the cure for cancer 10 times over. You know, it's just the amount of money that was thrown at this to get it to go away by political parties, by lobbyists, by all these people, just for whatever reason that they did it, was they had the money to do the research. They had the money for the equipment. They had the money for everything. And that's something that we don't usually have in healthcare. So they didn't want to say it was for political reasons, but for political reasons, they were able to have the resources that they had to be able to develop this. So that was another big thing. And they said that they didn't feel as though politics led the scientists who work for Pfizer, who work for Moderna to make the decisions and to really push it through. But they were just happy to finally have the resources to be able to do their jobs without having to worry about funding, without having to worry about all that. And that was a big relief too, that, you know, the backdoor people who are trying to, you know, manipulate us or whatever you want to say, creating the Facebook memes, are not trying to manipulate us into getting this vaccine necessarily. It may be perceived that way by some people, and I completely understand why. But that doesn't seem to be the case in this type of virus or in this type of vaccine, thankfully.
Right, and that actually kind of ties back into something else, because it's not FDA approved, and Beth did mention that too, and that's because, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, the FDA approval requires more time being tested, or longer phase 3 and 4 clinical trials than they've had, correct? Because right now they're releasing it. It's under the emergency use authorization, which is granted to the end of the phase 3 trials for the Pfizer and the Moderna, or I want to say November, October-ish, when the phase 3 trials were ended and they presented and applied for the emergency use authorization. And those were granted December, right?
Like the first week, I think, of December, because they really pushed it out on like the 15th.
Yeah, they did. And so, but I think following the money is important, especially in vaccine development, because if you follow the money with anything, looking at the money, you can find motivation there. So if there is any kind of corrupt, you know, intention behind it, you're probably going to find it if you follow the money trail. And so from what I've been able to find, my independent research has been that the Pfizer vaccine is, for the most part, funded with private money from Pfizer and investors on that side of things. The Moderna vaccine, they ended up getting a lot of money from the Operation Warp Speed from the government. They worked with the National Institute of Health and some of their infectious disease subgroups there within the National Institutes of Health. So the Moderna one, they had a lot of government help and collaboration with, whereas Pfizer is pretty much doing it. There's Pfizer and there's another, I can't remember the other one. I gotta pull it up real quick just to make sure I don't misquote anything. It was Pfizer and BioNTech. Well, I don't know all the different names, but anyway. But I mean, follow the money, I think, is an important part of it too. Knowing who's funding what can definitely influence, decisions and the way things go, especially when it comes to research. But that's the only reason I do kind of enjoy the fact that in this case, we do have one that's pretty much totally privately funded and one that's got a lot of public funding too, with very, very, very similar outcomes. From these are stats that I got from the phase 3, the conclusion of the phase 3 trials, the announcements that they gave. So Pfizer, you've got 95% efficacy after 28 days post the first dose. They're both 2-dose injections. Then you had Moderna at the other phase 3, they're looking at a 94.1% efficacy. And then the Pfizer one, they tested, I want to say down like 16 and older. And then you had the Moderna, they're 18 and older. So we don't have stuff for the children yet. Like Beth was saying, they just don't have that data. It might be totally safe. It might not be. We just haven't been tested yet. So that's where a lot of these things, like unknown doesn't automatically mean, well, it's the worst possible option and that unknown. It's just the fact that, look, we just haven't actually studied that. So we're not going to make conjectures about it. We're going to go with what the science says. The science doesn't say anything about it yet. We're going to say it doesn't say anything about it yet. We can make certain kind of predictions based on very similar things, but they've got to be educated guesses. You got to have solid hypotheses behind this kind of stuff. So we got like 3.5 minutes left on my free Zoom because I am just such a pro with this podcasting thing. And so I'm going to go ahead and we'll take a little 5-minute break, and then I'll get another meeting fired up. So grab drinks, hit the restroom, whatever. And then I'll see y'all back here in a few minutes, huh?
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much for rolling with me on this. Bye.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And we're back working around the free version of Zoom. Woohoo. So all the more reason for everyone watching this to subscribe, and then eventually I'll find a way to get money out of y'all. So you can not have my podcast interrupted halfway through. But anyway, that's a pipe dream. But what is real right now is Brian and Beth coming here again. I don't know why I'm redoing an intro. There's no commercial break. They're just picking right up where we left off. God. Anyway, all right. What was I rambling about before I was poor? So now we've all kind of talked about the first. I love the way it just left me hanging here. No backup at all. Just let me tie in my own noose with this. We talked about different reasons you were for and against it, and something that kind of you were worried about, Brian, that they give you some more confidence in. So I guess now at this point, you've both kind of heard each other talk a little bit, kind of a baseline understanding of where you two are coming from. I figure I kind of just give you two the floor to discuss different things that you're worried about. Maybe ask Brian why he wasn't worried about something that worried about you. Maybe talk about some different angles you may not have considered from the other side. So yeah, so if anyone wants to talk about something, well, I'll kick it off first. Let's talk about the fertility thing. So you said, Beth, you're worried about the fertility stuff. So go ahead and present the information that you'd heard about that in a little more. And if Brian wants to talk about what he's heard from it sounds like he's got some great sources from where he works, and he's got a resource for that kind of thing. And I got some research too. I'm just curious where what I've read kind of lines up with. So yeah, did Beth talk about fertility, and then Brian can respond from there.
Sure. So I actually haven't really heard a whole lot. It's just been the backward, the backside talk, right? Like the little peanut gallery in the back of your ear. And like I said, for me, I don't care. My ovaries are, they're done. They're done doing their job.
Factory's closed.
But for people, we've got a lot of young nurses that still want children, right? So I think that because of so much unknown and that constant, it almost feels like fertility without a vaccine is already an issue in today's day and age, right? Like, don't know why, but it's talked about. There's physicians that specialize in fertility. It just seems like there's already so many issues that we don't know why people are having these issues, right? So now the talk is, why go introduce something else that could potentially affect your fertility later on? Again, does it? I don't know. They don't know either. So I guess my side of things was for those who are still of childbearing age to maybe consider that in their decision making, right? Because again, we just don't know. And
right, it has been studied.
We don't know. People who work for Quest, doing tests for the antibodies of why we have the IgG versus the IgM antibody test now. When does the IgM start to kick in? We don't know, right?
Yeah.
So there's still so much of the unknown, and that's kind of why I keep going back to that, because those who are of childbearing age should have that question, at least in the back of their mind, as to, will this affect me later on when I want to have children? So that's kind of, again, I personally haven't read a lot on it because it doesn't personally affect me. So I don't know. I'd love to hear, Brian, did you hear anything? Have you guys read anything about it or heard anything from these docs on that?
So very similarly, there's really no research on it because it is so this is where it comes into it, quote unquote, being rushed. You know what I mean? Because they needed to get it out. They needed to start protecting the certain people in certain age brackets and immunocompromised and stuff like that. And most of those people aren't going to be in that childbearing age anyways. And it wasn't really a question I had asked. I've asked it just kind of through the grapevine, and there's really not a whole lot of data, like you say. For me personally, it wasn't a huge thing. I've got a 13-year-old running around here somewhere. That's enough of a reason not to have kids. No, just kidding. She's a great kid, but so it just wasn't really a concern for me. And I definitely understand that from people, though, especially people who are trying to get pregnant now or have had problems with infertility in the past and now are trying to have a second kid or are really concerned about it because you don't want to ruin that chance. That could be the one chance that somebody has, and you definitely don't want to ruin it. So I can definitely understand that. And I really hope that additional research comes out. My understanding is, though, that with the way the messenger RNA works and the vaccine works is very similar to other vaccines, how it just creates the antibodies and things like that. But again, it's new, so we don't know. It could do something in the body that, the mutations that everyone talks about in the superpowers. I'm still waiting for mine, but we'll just have to wait and see. Unfortunately, Justin may have additional info that I haven't heard, but like I said, I haven't heard anything positive or negative necessarily. More just concerns from people, including physicians, including researchers, that because they don't want to say it's not going to hurt you, and then 10 years later we're suing them because you were part of the COVID vaccine, so you're entitled to compensation.
Right. Well, plus, I mean, the stakes are high enough as fertility and possibly, another human life involved. Of course, no one's going to want to put all of their eggs in that basket and say, oh, yeah, just because there's not any data showing it's not safe doesn't mean it's not going to be data showing that later on. Because again, it hasn't been studied during this. Like what Brian was saying, they just had to get it out. We know these populations are at risk. Let's study these populations that probably can be vaccinated. The ones that either are higher risk for spreading it, or those are higher risk of having bad outcomes from being infected with COVID. So the infertility thing I did dig into a bit because I've seen it come up quite a bit and something I was curious about. I mean, if something makes you infertile, then I'm fine getting it because I'm 31, I'm good. No kids here. I'm happy. I'm cool with it. But in all seriousness, it's something I see popping up a lot, and that's how I spend a lot of my time just reading up on things. So for this, I can't remember the individual. I want to say it came from someone. I don't know if it was I think it may have been a PhD doctor who raised a concern about the spike protein that's being created or being told to be created by the messenger RNA. It's very, very similar to a spike protein that is developed in the placenta when you're developing, a fetus, of course, for the first time. And the concern there was, well, if you're building the spike protein that's similar to the one that's formed in the placenta, then you may have the antibodies attacking that same thing. From what I've heard from doctors that were doing, and I can't remember any of the names, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but from what I've heard from multiple different doctors, from sources that I tend to trust, is that the similarity in the spike protein is like one code of I can't think of the word for it. Basically, if it's a computer program, it's basically one line of code, so to speak. So the general, a lot of people are thinking it's probably not similar enough to cause the issues, but again, it warrants study. It needs to be studied in that controlled specific environment to find out for sure, is there going to be an issue or is there not? So for that, again, I don't think it's unreasonable at all. Or if you're someone that wants to have kids, but I do know there were people that did become naturally pregnant, so to speak, while on the trial. So I know there are at least instances of individuals being able to become pregnant. But again, these trials, even for what they've done. So let's see, the phase 3 trials for the Pfizer vaccine had 43,000 people, and the Moderna had 30,000 patients. So I mean, yeah, granted, these are a lot of people, but you're talking about populations in hundreds of millions. Then there's a lot more factors that could come up too. Has there been anything that either of you has seen in the news, or any cases that have occurred that have been newsworthy since then that either reinforce your decision? Okay, cool, I'm glad I didn't get it, or Brian, make you sweat any? Because I know there's talk about that doctor that passed away pretty suddenly, like 3 days after getting his first injection. And there's the nurse that had the fainting thing. And there's a lot of anytime anything bad happens after one of these, of course, everyone's going to talk about it. So has anything caught your eye?
For me, the nurse fainting thing, that was explained away by her. She's got a vagal response.
Why would they pick her?
So
I looked into that too. Like anytime she has needles around her, like homegirl just passes out. It's like, hey, well, you're in the wrong job, miss. And B, like, why would they pick you? Like, I'm sorry, that is just poor planning. That's just asking to have the hyperbole and the conspiracy thing just out the gate. Like, there's legitimate questions. Why would you add more of this? Like, someone don't get fired, but like, stop making choices for a while.
Yeah, be maybe one rung lower on the decision-making totem pole.
More choosing people.
So that one didn't concern me at all, and I understand that everyone has the potential to have a reaction to something. You know, I can take Tylenol just fine, but somebody else can't. You know, and the same thing goes for the flu vaccine. EpiPens. You know, some people can't have EpiPens. It's a life-saving medication, but you can't have it because of something that's in it. I feel pretty confident when it comes to this vaccine because pretty much everything that's in it is already inside of your body. So that's a good thing, in my opinion. And then as far as the doctor goes, down in, I believe it's Southern Florida, that passed away after getting the vaccine. That's a very interesting case that I've been following. As far as I know, there hasn't been anything new released. The unfortunate thing is that correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, so you have a group of people who are going to say that he got it, so it has to be from it. When this guy has some underlying disease that he's just never been tested for.
Right. And he was elderly too, right? He's in a more at-risk population, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think he was either in his high 50s or mid 60s.
That's where I was thinking. Yeah, from what I remember hearing. And so he died from basically he got the first round of the injection. I don't know which one, but then 3 days later, his platelet count drops to nothing. Pretty much.
Yeah, and he had some weird reaction and some weird rash reaction or something like that.
Yeah, so idiopathic thrombocytic autopenia, something like that. I'm probably butchering it, but basically they don't know why, but his platelet count also dropped to nothing, and so he ended up having a hemorrhagic stroke is how he died, from what I at least I've heard reported. But again, this kind of thing where we don't have the official autopsy results, we don't have all the data on it, it's pure speculation. So it's one of those things where it's okay, well, it's being talked about, so it has to be addressed, but here's how we address it and say, well, we don't know yet. Maybe, maybe not. But again, it's these conversations aren't being had in the media. You're not seeing any headlines saying maybe, maybe not. It's all saying, oh, this guy died and leading you down a certain path. Or it's saying, oh, nothing to worry about at all. Totally fine. Well, we don't know, I mean, there had been very, very low correlation with COVID. We know there's issues with clotting, and sometimes you do clot, sometimes you clot too much, sometimes you don't clot at all. So, there's issues that again, just need more time to be studied for sure. So, okay. Brian, was there anything that you, I guess I asked about those doctors first. Is there anything that the news that you would point out to being a cause of concern or cause of relief?
Just anything that seems like it's extreme or breaking news related to the vaccine. I always tend to have a lot of hesitation with, because to me, that's somebody, and I trust the media for the most part when it comes to general everyday news, you know what I mean? But I always double verify, no matter what it is, whether it's news, whether it's evidence-based research, whatever, I always try to double verify. And I hate breaking news because usually it's, catchy headlines, it's catchy things that are just there to get your attention. So that way you watch their station, get their views up. So I hate breaking news, like the breaking news of the physician died because of the vaccine. No, let's stop doing that. Let's wait. Let's get the facts and then do it. But other than that, I haven't really seen anything that has really been concerning to me, to the point where I am worried about, oh no, am I going to die now because of the vaccine? I'm more worried, am I going to, wake up the next morning from a PE from actually having the virus than the vaccine. But to the same end, I haven't been following self-admittedly, I haven't been following the vaccine as closely after having gotten the vaccine as I did previously. So, but there hasn't been anything really that stuck out yet for me.
Okay. There's a question I should have asked you before. So you've had both rounds of it? The vaccine?
Yep, I just had my other round Friday, my second round Friday.
Okay.
And no side effects from either.
Okay.
And it's been just some arm soreness, like with anything. And I've had a couple friends who I worked with who've had some GI upset, and some fatigue, a little bit of fever and things like that, but nothing that wouldn't be unexpected with any other immune response.
Right. So I mean, the biggest side effects that I came across when I was researching the vaccines was some fever, the arm soreness, and I think the biggest adverse, like serious adverse reaction was an allergic reaction, and that was usually within the first like 10 or so minutes. So like, they monitor you for like 15 minutes after you get it, right?
Yeah, you have to sit, and at least where we are, they give you a little timer, or you set a timer on your phone, and then they'll go through, and whenever your timer goes off, you can leave.
Okay.
But just like with anything.
Right. Yeah, they just keep an eye on it. That way, if there is some kind of allergic reaction to it, they'll be ready for it. The EpiPens and whatever else. I mean, you got healthcare providers. If you're gonna have an allergic reaction, that's the place to do it, right?
Right. Exactly.
So cool. So they mitigate that risk as much as possible. So is there anything that you two are talking about, or are you listening to each other talk about that you'd want to speak with, address each other directly, and I can butt out for a little bit?
So I was actually going to touch on some of the things we've seen in the media too. I'm sure you guys saw this on Facebook. The guy who got the air shot into the arm. Have you seen that one?
What was that? Yeah, I didn't. I saw the photo, then I'm like, I've seen a lot of injections, and that's That's not
so
one.
it looked like, I mean, there was nothing in the vial. Like the vial was already, the plunger was all the way.
The plunger
at
was
the end.
depressed already.
Correct. And then the guy like just kind of wiped it like he was wiping it clean. I don't even know what ended up coming of that, but that just made me laugh because that caused a lot of controversy on the Facebook world.
Right? Like, did you find anything about that, or do you know what happened there?
I didn't. But it actually made me kind of laugh because when this first started coming out, a lot of the hospitals up this way were doing research, right? And you could be part of their research trials. And when it was asked to someone in the higher ups if they were going to participate in the trial, he said, no, I'll wait till it's out and it's my turn. But he didn't want to be part of the trial. So it kind of actually made me laugh as some of the higher ups in the hospital systems were like, no, you all go first. I'll let you guys go first. You're on the front lines.
I will say in a lot of cases, well, on the one hand, I can get like, if you have a limited resource of it, the ones on the front lines are at the most risk. There's a way you can say that, okay, I want to save this for those who may be on the front lines who need it most. But there's also a lot of, I've seen a lot of hospitals administration in my time basically just be like, yeah, no, you be the guinea pigs. That's fine. Yeah, no, you be the guinea pigs. It's not so much out of concern for your health, is more concern for them. I'm not going to speak for your, administration. They could be great. Fingers crossed it'd be dope. But but I can see how that you can make a case for that either way for sure.
Yeah, but I do see both sides of that as well. And then the other thing I kind of want to talk about was, I guess, the media, obviously, like Brian said, there is a lot of late breaking news, and there comes the fear mongering, right? That they've kind of instilled this fear in people that you're going to die, right? And we see it, and Brian, I'm sure you see it out in the field too, right? Like, somebody's having an MI, and then next thing you know, you're getting a notification, hey, you were exposed to COVID, right? So what did the man die of? Did the man die of COVID, or did he die of an MI, right? And so the numbers on these death certificates, that's kind of what's being skewed, right? So maybe the COVID caused this man to throw a clot and he died of an MI. But which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? And so I think that that's caused a lot of controversy with the general population that really don't know medicine, pathophysiology, things like that, that make people scared, right? So are these numbers being skewed one way or the other to fear people into getting this vaccine to quote unquote get back to normal? What is our normal going to be, right? Like if we have the 75% of population get this vaccine, create herd immunity, what is our normal going to be? We don't know, because you can still contract the virus. You can still carry the virus home to other family members. Again, it might be the more mild symptoms, but those are all things that kind of play into my mind too, is how we know it's serious, but how how far does this really go? Is that
It's
making any sense?
It's all cost benefit analysis.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You know, I just see the hashtags all the time. Like, I want to get back to normal, hashtag got my vaccine. And I get that. I get it. But we don't even know what our normal is going to be. I mean, I have 3 kids, 2 of them are in elementary school. They're wearing masks to school. These kids haven't seen their teachers' faces or vice versa. I mean, I don't know how many times I've gone to the hospital and somebody's like, oh, hey, Beth. I'm like, who are you? You got your thing on your head, you got your mask on. I don't even know what you look like.
Yeah.
You know, I almost feel like this is a lot of like, we're all part of a social experiment at this point too. It's just a very weird time. And I'm so grateful that Justin, you brought us all on here just to discuss it all, right? Like, Brian, I appreciate you not like badgering me for not getting the vaccine.
No, absolutely not. I completely understand.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard because I don't know where I stand at this point sometimes. You know, we're seeing so much in the ERs. Our ERs are saturated here in Central Florida. We're feeling it. Then it also goes back to, I'm also seeing unnecessary admissions. There's people they're admitting that really could go home on like these home monitoring kits and things like that. But on the other side of things too, there is reimbursement for admissions.
So there's incentive to say more people have. In some cases, there may be incentive.
Is kind of like going off the tangent of you know, the vaccine, but those are kind of things again that all kind of played into my decision making of, you know, again, the money behind things.
Right. Well, it plays in the public trust. So if you have the government saying, "Hey, take this vaccine. Go ahead. We rushed it. We did all this stuff with it, or when we rushed, but we're getting it to you under emergency use authorization. We're getting this to you." But after we've watched people, I mean, you've had people from Fauci to the Surgeon General. First it was don't wear masks. Now it's like, when I need to wear a mask. Well, why'd you say don't wear a mask before? Oh, because we want to make sure we had some for the healthcare providers. Oh, so you're going to sacrifice me for them? It's like, you're either lying to me or you don't care about me in some of these cases. And again, you see this happening over and over again. So and trust me, anyone who knows me knows I am not going to take a word the government says at face value. I'm going to research the absolute crap out of it. And again, when I go to the CDC, if I read any stat off the CDC, I've checked it 3 other places first. So I promise you, like, when no one's going to mistrust government more than me, I can assure you out of that. But the issue with, like, I get why no one's going to want to trust this. You know, I sure wouldn't if I didn't do more of the research or have some more of the medical background to know where to even go to find the research and what I'm even looking at. Because there's not a good medium for getting this kind of scientific data from these studies to the general public, because it takes effort. You have to have some kind of, 9 times out of 10, if I'm going through reading a study, I'm Googling other things I found in the study so I can understand what they're measuring, what they're talking about. You know, it takes a lot of work. That's why I wanted to have exactly this, have people who have done that work express it in a way that is digestible. And we can hear this, we can understand things. We can learn a bit more about how this whole thing works, and we hear both sides of a discussion. We don't just hear one person saying, yes, go get it, here's why. We have one person saying, I got it, here's why. My reasons aren't the same as somebody else's. Someone else can have totally valid reasons for not wanting it. It's everything in medicine is all risk versus reward. Like, what's the risk of taking this versus the reward of it, or the risk of not taking this versus the reward of it? And you two have different risk reward, results from this. And other people out there listening to this are going to have the same kind of differing results as well. So it's definitely, it's tough doing all this research because you've got some shady people in government doing shady stuff like they always do. But that's why it's important to do the research, or at least be able to find people you trust who have done it. And again, I'm not going to say take anything that we've said here at face value, especially not me. I'm a dum-dum. I just Google a lot, but I Google a lot. Or technically I use DuckDuckGo because it doesn't track anything I do. Goodbye, government. But the point is that the research, you got to put in the work to really get it. So just taking up these, oh yeah, Bill Gates wants us to get it because we're all going to get microchipped. Say, well, first off, dum-dum, you're carrying around an iPhone every day voluntarily. Like, you're making it pretty easy. You don't need to microchip you, bud. But I mean, it's important to, because when you see, though, there's probably, like, the sad thing is there's probably more traction behind this being turning you into antennas for 5G than there is for the kind of conversation that we're having now. So thanks for coming on, helping me trying to change that paradigm a little bit. But it's frustrating, right? I mean, I remember all 3 of us, I'm sure, can be frustrated from people, even though we're on different sides of the discussion. It's frustrating seeing people just pick a side without doing their due diligence.
Mhm.
And that's my big thing, kind of. And I want to take a step into Beth's corner for a second. And I really do respect her and people who come out, especially healthcare workers, and say, I'm not getting it now, but it doesn't mean I'm not ever getting it. And I think that is one thing that in the media currently they're talking about is the amount of healthcare workers who are opting not to get it right now. And that's dangerous to me because they're not understanding why these healthcare workers aren't getting it. There are a lot of healthcare workers who believe in the political side of it, who believe that it's just not right for them. And that's okay. We all have our own reasons, like Justin said, and like Beth said, but you have to understand that just because they're not getting it now doesn't mean they're not going to get it in the future. And saying that, 75% of healthcare workers are not opting not to get it, that's dangerous to the public. Because if they're seeing that the healthcare workers aren't getting it, not knowing the reasons behind it, then why are they going to get it? And there are so many people who say that, I'm just not going to get it yet. I'm going to wait to see more research come out. And there's nothing wrong with that because you made an informed decision versus just making a decision of, I'm not going to get it because, my cousin's brother's nephew who believes in, whatever said it's going to do this to me. Just make an informed decision. Make sure you're getting your information from legitimate sources. If there's something that doesn't seem right, chances are it's not. Chances are there's some manipulation behind it. There's something that you shouldn't be, not that you shouldn't be listening to it, but dig a little deeper. If it feels like there's information missing, chances there are. And if you're not making an informed decision, then that's where it becomes dangerous. So, like I say, I applaud Beth. I applaud all the other healthcare workers who are kind of saying, I'm not going to get it yet, because they're making informed decisions for themselves. Every person who gets it or doesn't get it should make an informed decision, not just a political decision or whatever decision because of whatever reason. Just make sure you know what you're looking at.
Yep, make it educated, respectable decision based on information that you've gathered. So something that I always do is, like, whenever I see like an article, and typically I always follow the link trail. So they'll say, reporting on this. Okay, they link to where it came from. So I'll click that one. And then eventually, sometimes it ends up at a legitimate study that I can read and look at the data. I can measure what they measured and look at it. Cool. Okay, that one checked out. A lot of times it'll end up at like some random Twitter post or from some hoo-ha out there in the Twitter sphere. So it's important to have, again, the conversations we're having now, because I think people, especially the healthcare providers who are opting not to get it, for the right reasons, so to speak, for the ones who are like, hey, there's not enough data for me to feel comfortable. I have these other kind of concerns. I have these potential risk factors, or, the cost benefit analysis for me weighs out differently than someone else. They need to be the ones being able to give it a chance to say why they're not getting it. Because if you just see a bunch of people who are in healthcare not getting it, you're going to assume they're all working with the same information in the same place. Where a lot of healthcare workers I've talked to who weren't going to get it, they're giving me some dumb reasons. Like, they haven't done the research. And it's easy to see, and it's sad. You're right. It's absolutely dangerous to the public health, because people look to us. People look to healthcare workers for the protection. Like, well, we're here to take care of them. Of course, we're not trying to take care of ourselves too. Which the irony of that with paramedics and ER nurses is already kind of funny in itself. But the fact is, we have a very, very powerful moment in situations like this, where there are definitely a right and a wrong way to approach these situations. And unfortunately, I see a lot of healthcare workers taking the wrong approach, whereas people like Beth taking the right approach to this kind of thing. Those are the voices we need to be elevating and getting out there. So is there anything else that you guys were wanting to talk about regarding the vaccine, or anything else, your personal experiences?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't really have anything crazy to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's just, it comes down to just the simple fact of do your research and find people you trust.
So speaking of research, so what are some sources that you'll go to? Of course, I know, Brian, you've got a lot there at your hospital with you in your immediate work environment. And it was always great to be able to walk over to a doc and be like, hey, what do you think about this? I always appreciate that. But so for those who may not have access to that, which is pretty much everyone else, where are some places or some scholarly sources that you would go to find information when you're researching things like that? Is there certain places you go to? Particularly, I tend to lean on Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins pretty heavily when I'm looking for stuff.
Yeah. Large healthcare systems, like I say, Johns Hopkins is a great one. Mayo Clinic. You can usually find most of the larger healthcare systems, wherever you live now, have COVID hotlines or things like that. The little community hospitals will usually have something, but the large healthcare systems will have something where you can get information, or places you can call or you can email, and they'll be able to give you information or resources. The good thing is a lot of the COVID research is open access. So a lot of people can do it. So even if you just Google it in, if it's a cited article, if it's has multiple authors, things like that, those are usually the type of articles you want to look for. As long as you know how to decipher evidence-based medicine. If you don't know how to decipher that, find somebody who can, and they'll be able to kind of guide you down that path. But large health systems, large systems that have the ability to treat these patients and have been treating these patients, because each health system too has different resources to treat the patients, have been treating them differently and see different things. So, but definitely the trustworthy ones, the John Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, the Mass Generals, the, Orlando Health, the Tampa Generals, all those different places that have really good resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Beth, anything to add to that?
I actually did find a couple things on the Journal of the JAMA, the medical journals.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot. They kind of, go back to like the CDC and stuff like that. But there's not a whole lot out there yet because, again, there's not much known. I agree with Brian. A lot of the large healthcare systems that have participated in the research studies and things like that of their own, had the control groups and things like that. I think that those are really good resources. And, Google, Wikipedia ain't the thing. that ain't the best way to go.
Yeah, be careful. Choosing your sources is a very, very, very important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And my thing is like, having this open discussion, have it with people, right? Like they ask you questions and you can tell them, like for me, I tell people why I don't get it, but I see why people do want to get it, right? And I see the benefits of it. So I try to educate both sides, not just be biased on my own side. So I think that's really important. Like Brian mentioned, people do look, and Justin, you too, people do look up to us. They ask us. I mean, I don't know how many messages I get weekly of a medical question about something else, right? So people trust us. They want our opinions, but they want our educated opinions, not just our opinions, right? So I think it's really important to state both sides of the argument when we're talking to them, just like we are here.
Absolutely. And like we're kind of wrapping out now, so I guess I'll let it out of the bag. I got the first dose of the Moderna vaccine last week. And Brian, dude, my arm hurts so bad. Like I get the flu vaccine every year and it's always a little tender, but man, it was tough sleeping for one night. I'm not gonna lie. It was real.
Heard that with the Moderna.
Yeah, it was. I've heard that seems to be a very common one with the Moderna one, because everyone I know that got it too. We had a rough about a day and a half, of some real soreness at the injection site, but it wasn't really swollen. I didn't get any fever. It was just sore, like I finally put in a good workout. It was like day 2 after a practical day at Fire Academy, but just the arm instead of my whole body. But yeah, so then I go to, so the Pfizer vaccine is 21 days apart, and the Moderna is 28 days for the 2 different injections. And but yeah, so I for me, I weighed the cost benefit analysis. I was like, initially I don't want to get it. It being some brand new technology I didn't know a lot about. I'm like, this does not seem like something that I feel like I feel okay, being who I am. Let's say the risks, I don't have really any risk factors for if I catch COVID. If I get it, it's likely I'll probably be shaking it off. I was worried about, having a higher viral load, but I'm not on the front lines of EMS anymore. I'm not seeing sick patients where I'm at now. I do see people who are in at-risk categories. So that played into my decision as well. But initially I'm like, if I get this, it's very unlikely I'm going to have a bad outcome. So I'm like, I feel fine waiting and seeing what goes on a little bit. And my mind was, I'll probably end up getting it, but right now I'm fine waiting for it. But then reading more of the research, digging much further deeper into the phase 3 trial information, stuff like that, and stuff from the phase 4 trials, and like reading as much as I could about it and hearing more, I was like, okay, I think for me, it would be beneficial for me to have it, because I miss my grandma, it'd be great to have a little more confidence, be able to see her, put her at less risk, and from the information that I've seen, I think for me personally, between where my new job is and different kinds of populations that may be at risk I interact with, and of course my family being at risk. I've got, a fairly brand new baby niece, another one's, a couple years old. If I can mitigate risks, and for me, I thought it'd be more beneficial to mitigate some of the certain risks than the potential bad things that might happen, the potential poor outcomes. Because for me, and I do have a mindset where I'm fine if I, take a little more risk with certain side effects or that kind of thing that we may not know about, because at the end of the day, like I don't really have dependents. I'm not looking to, get a family started, anything like that. Like I'm a happy dude. I got good stuff going on. I don't want to die tomorrow or grow a third arm or anything like that. But man, if I get that third arm, that's the gaming opportunities alone, finally get some Fortnite kills or something, get some wins. But I don't play Fortnite. That's embarrassing. Anyway. So I decided, I made the same, I went through the same kind of the situations you guys did. I did the same research, a lot of the same questions. And, for me, they came out answered one way, for y'all came out answered it, a different way. And I think that's how it should be. Like, I'm not advocating you go out and do what I do, because then there'd be way too many terrible podcasts out there. I'd never get any traction. And then B, it'd be a much less interesting world, and again, we have nothing in medicine's black and white, there's grays, and the gray areas where we need to have the conversations. So thank you guys so much for hopping on here, talking with me about this. I think that this was awesome.
Absolutely. It was great.
I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anything you guys want to plug before I do my little sign off spiel?
I don't think so. I'm just looking forward to hearing it and hoping it helps other people out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to put this up. It'll be Thursday when this one comes out.
Agreed. Everybody wash your hands.
Perfect.
Continue to wash your hands and wear your mask.
Yeah. Wash your hands, wear your masks. Don't left lanes for passing. Let's get
Stop
on board
touching
with
your
this,
face.
people.
Right? You know what? I think this whole podcast, I've been touching my darn face, actually. I'm like touching my hair, my face.
Oh, I'm so bad. Well, I have facial hair now for the first time in like 10 years, so I'm like constantly messing with it. It's not even itchy. Like, it feels fine. I'm just like, I have this now.
It's fun to play with. You can be smart, right?
I get really contemplative. I'm like, feel like I need to play some chess. Watch some Queen's Gambit. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and or listening to this. Like I said, I'm getting back on track for the new year. We're gonna have new episodes every Thursday, and it's gonna be honest conversation about difficult topics. So the best way to spread these kind of messages is to literally spread the message. Hit the share button, share it wherever you want, tell your friends about it, use some hashtags. I'm still in the process of getting tyndallsrazor.com up. I'm gonna have a blog on there too. So if you want to hear just me ranting about stuff in written form, you're in for a treat. But until then, thank you so much for watching and listening to this, and I will see y'all next week. Love y'all, be safe.